I have never felt confused and impressed by architecture before in my life, right? At least I don't think so. Today, while I was going through some projects, I stumbled upon this house that has a railroad attached to it with another smaller building next to it. Of course, I'm talking about the Olsen Kundig architects designed home, which is called the Maxon House, which has an attached studio next to it that moves back and forth on this railroad. Now, I wasn't familiar with this project when I first saw it, so of course I watched the video on YouTube, and at first I was like, well, that's pretty neat, and then little by little I was like, this is kind of gimmicky. When you look at the house, it's like beautiful. It sits on a property in Washington. There's trees all over the place. It's secluded from, at least it seems that way, from everything. And honestly, it just looks incredibly amazing. It's really simple, which I like that. The house is basically a bar and then a railroad and then another like rectangle thing. And everything is made of Corten steel, which is that steel that basically weathers, right? Turns orange. And architects love that stuff. I mean, it's a beautiful material, but I always wonder, like, do people actually like this stuff? Like, I really don't know if it's something that we actually enjoy, or for as designers, we're taught to enjoy this stuff. Like, does the average person actually like their buildings to turn that nasty, rusted orange? Like, is this just some giant conspiracy that we're being fed and we're all buying it? But anyway, I do think it's completely beautiful. Something that's interesting about it is that the specific Corten steel that was used in this project has like certain stamps and like scars on it. And the architect on the project site, he points them out and he says that he calls them anomalies. And there's this wabi sabi tradition I've never heard of, but apparently they celebrate this, these scars in the project. And that, he was really happy with that. And watching this, I'm like, man, this is such great inspiration for next time a contractor destroys my project. I'm just going to tell the client, hey, these are just scars. They're solidified moments that happen that now make your building unique. But the point is that this Corten steel does fit nicely. Corten steel, the color of it and the trees and the site, everything just blends in together completely harmoniously. Now, when you go inside the actual house, as I mentioned before, it's just a bar. It's a double loaded corridor, which means that you have a hallway, and then on each side of the hallway, you have program. So in the middle of the house, you have the bedrooms, which for some reason, this video never shows the bedrooms, what they look like. Like, I think they show a peek of one of the buildings, and it's fine. There's nothing to complain about, but I was kind of sussed out by the fact that they don't show every single room. But I guess the point of the video was to highlight the studio, which I'll get to in a minute. But the point is that you have this corridor, and then at one end of the corridor, you have the living room and the kitchen space. And it's pretty much all covered with glass, which is amazing. You don't want to block any of those views. Those trees are gorgeous. A couple critiques that I do have in this space is at first, there's no like terrace on the outside, which kind of sucks. Like, here's the problem. I get what they did. They want to keep the aesthetic of the project true, a simple bar form that just doesn't really interfere too much with the landscape. I completely understand that. But in principle, when you actually apply this design and you're living in this house, it almost feels like a prison where you're looking outside of these windows and you're like, I want to be able to go out there. And the only way you can go out there, at least from what I can see, is by going out through one of the main doors and then going around and going to the front. I don't like that. I like the blending of the in versus out. This is a complete cliche in architecture where people are always talking about blending the in with the out. It's super cliche, but in this case, for the love of God, can't I just open a sliding door here and then step out a foot and just have a coffee out there? Like, it didn't have to be that complicated. It didn't have to take away from the design. So that's one of my major critiques here. Also, the mullion patterns that they have on this facade, they felt all over the place. It's because some of the windows are operable. You have, I'm pretty sure there's some awning or some casement windows there. But to be honest with you, I just think if they would have at least added some mullions to the non-operable windows to match the operable windows, it would all blend in more harmoniously. This is something that could have been caught on elevation. I don't understand why they let this happen. And then my other critique is the actual kitchen itself. It seems like an afterthought. Dude, this kitchen is not comfortable, okay? The view is beautiful. You are washing dishes and you're looking outside. I love it. But then there's this awkward bar with seating in a corridor. That's basically all it is, because you wouldn't sit there in real life. If you're sitting there, you're probably having a quick conversation, but you're not going to turn your back to this beautiful nature behind you. Again, I understand why they did this. If they would have placed, that island up against the windows, then you don't have that floor to ceiling anymore, and you're blocking some of the light. So this is a way to do it, but I think they should have spent more time redesigning the layout a little bit more so that you wouldn't have that awkward kitchen. It's just completely awkward. Everything else I'm fine with in this space. It works. Now on the other side, right, we're getting closer now to the studio. On the other side, where you have your studio, you also have your primary bedroom. And it's so funny because, like, from the second I saw this project and I realized that it was a studio, I realized that, of course, it had to be close to the primary bedroom, because I bet you that when he convinced his wife, like, honey, I want to have my own man cave and I want to be able to separate it from the house so that I could do things that I want to do in my man cave, 20 feet away. His wife was like, sure, you could do that, but I need to be able to see you at all times. So that's why everything is glass in the master bedroom. And like, as I saw it, I started picturing like, what would a fight look like? Like, I can imagine him standing on his little platform and like slamming the button, and then the thing just starts dragging across the railroad and they're like staring at each other. And the door on the actual studio is yellow, and the owner points out that it's yellow because in the railroad community, yellow means warning. So he like slams that warning door in the face of the. I really got into this whole scenario of thinking it, but the point is that you have this beautiful master, lots of light coming in, no complaints there. You're looking at this railroad studio that just goes 20 feet away and then comes back 20 feet away, and they never for some reason show the actual studio like attached to the home, which again is another like sus moment that I ran into watching this video. But once you get into the studio, I think there's nothing to say. The whole point of the studio moving anyway, just because the architects were like, they had done this other project where the clients of the other project were like, man, we have this family member and like he's kind of annoying, so it'd be awesome if we could just press a button and move his room to the other side of the house. And they were like, you know what? That sounds like an actual incredible idea that we're going to look into. And they actually have a gizmologist in their office who made a mock-up idea of how this could work. And then they took that idea and implemented it into this project. Beside, there's nothing else to this. Like, that's literally what happened. So you have this studio that sits on a railroad track, and this studio doesn't really do anything else beside that. Like, when you go inside, it's 2 levels, and then on the first level you have what I imagine is his workspace, and then I think on the second area is where they have the thinking space. And then since there's steel inside, it's pretty cool. It's magnetic, so you have a pin-up wall that you can attach your work to. The interesting thing is, they were talking about this like dumbwaiter that they have, which is a lift that you can put heavy objects onto, and it takes it to the second floor. I'm like, man, that's pretty neat that they have that. That's like a cool little feature. And I realized that it's because there's no stair in the house. So there's a ladder. To get upstairs, you have a ladder, which is, I don't know, it just seems kind of like, ugh. And not to mention, if someone gets injured, like, they're not coming down or being able to go up easily at all. I think it would have been a cooler idea to have like a stair on the railroad, like a spiral staircase that attaches somehow, like a platform or something. I don't know. I think it would have been way cooler to do something like that than like, hey, take this ladder and climb your way up or down. I just don't think that this works well at all. But don't get me wrong, you better believe that if this was my property, I'm inviting friends over for some beer when I first get it. I don't tell them anything about the fact that it moves. I just tell them that it's a decorative railroad element that's sitting beneath my building. And then I would lean over the button accidentally and watch this thing move at one foot every 3 minutes. And I would crack up seeing their faces when they're like, what the hell? But beside that, it's just gimmicky. Like, if you take a look at the whole entire property, it's nice, right? But get rid of the landscape. You have a moving building and you have this rectangle. There's nothing interesting about the rectangle, to be honest with you. There's nothing new, nothing innovative that's been done before. It's just a house. It's fine. The spaces are not great. They're okay at most. And then you have that moving studio, which is somewhat functional, whatever. But there's no point to it moving. Like, is there really a reason that you would have to justify spending all this extra money to do this movement? Of course not. At this moment, there isn't. So I started to think about the fact that it moves and how this could help architecture, right? I just because it's not necessary doesn't mean that it's not important that it was done, right? This is a really cool exploration of how you can start to make movement in architecture. Now, it's been done before. It's not the first time that they do something like this. This was more like of a show off thing. But I feel like this is a really cool opportunity for this architecture firm to take this and apply it to other projects in different ways that could be a little bit more functional. And each time they develop on that idea, make it better. And overall, I think it could be a cool moment for architecture. I just don't think that making a studio that moves works unless if there was like they were like, oh, my son is a drummer and he annoys the hell out of me and I can't work, so every morning I have to move the studio over. But then you would just say, well, why not build it over there in the first place if you're going to move it all the way over there? But overall, I did enjoy the project. I didn't care too much for the movement of it, but I thought it was fun. So